No one in the VIP lounge knew his name, but after a few minutes, everyone gave a standing ovation. This is the story of a silent rebellion, a legend written in bullets. And just watching won't be enough. If Lena's silent resistance touched you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like the video. Because sometimes the greatest victory comes with the quietest bullet. And true stories leave the deepest traces. From the outside, the Hawthorne Elite Shooting Range looked like something between a military academy and an art gallery. Its walls covered with glass and steel shone like knives in the morning sun, and the black marble floor reflected the light like mirrors. Every detail screamed that this place was not built for ordinary people, but for the elect. The smell of gunpowder and money prevailed in the air inside. Shooting here isn't just a skill, it was also a sign of status. And that morning, right at the door of that sacred place, someone was standing. Someone the system doesn't recognize, but shouldn't forget. Lena Wagner. He is 23 years old, with an unusual silence in his eyes. He carried neither a sewn-on uniform nor an expensive bag. He was wearing a military jacket that had faded over the years and worn out on the shoulders. On his shoulder, an M1 Garand rifle carrying the fatigue of time. He stood solemn, silent, and upright. For many, it's a museum piece. For him, it's a legacy. His father, Colonel Thomas Wagner, was a legendary sniper. His silence preceded the bullets. And he taught Lena the same things. The trigger is not pressed with the breath, but with the oath. But the staff of the shooting range did not see his story, but only the worn color of the jacket. Marcus Klein, the receptionist at the entrance, her hair combed back with gel, her gaze full of arrogance, approached Lena with a wry smile. His voice rose as if to make it heard to the few curious rich people around. VIP corridors, not for the lost and the cleaners. Lena's gaze didn't move at all. Not a sign of anger, not a smile. He just looked at the crowd out of the corner of his eye. Without looking up, he slowly pulled a worn-out card out of his pocket. A VIP card written in gold letters on black. It had been given to him by his father's former commander. A privilege earned through blood and loyalty. Lena handed the card to the scanner in front of Marcus. A beep. The green light came on. Marcus' facial expression instantly froze. But he succumbed to his pride. He muttered softly, "That's definitely a mistake." At that moment, the crowd behind him stepped in. Finn Schneider, the spoiled son of the hedge fund mogul, shouted from the bottom of the column. "And now the moppers are coming?" The group of rich children next to him burst out laughing. The phones were in their hands. The screens were turned to Lena. One took a photo, and the other started broadcasting a video. The headlines on the live broadcast began to drop, from recycling to VIP. It's time to cosplay in Hawthorne with a museum rifle. Where did that come from? Lena ignored it. He walked in. His every step echoed, as if he was silently saying, "I'm here." It wasn't just him who caught everyone's attention. He was also the one who disturbed their peace. For he did not wear branded clothes, nor did he carry gold-plated weapons. But there was something about Lena's walk. It's the kind of thing that changes the energy of the room. It's like a cold-blooded threat. It's an intensity that forces people to watch, albeit unintentionally. Some of the members seated in the luxurious seats raised their heads. Others continued to write on the screens, with the enthusiasm of having found a new ridicule at once. Fake pass, fake shooter. This is definitely going to go viral. Lena, on the other hand, slowly moved forward amid all the fake laughter and mocking looks. Not a step faster, not a look up. While they were talking, his story was already being written. The inside of the Hawthorne shooting range was an even sharper glimmer than the outside. Digital dashboards glowed with blue light, and each shot turned into a score in seconds on LED screens. The 50-meter firing lanes were meticulously aligned. In each lane, snipers posed with their custom-made weapons. On the seats sat men in leather jackets and women in luxurious watches. Lattes were $20, but Lena's presence seemed to cost a lot more than the price of a drink. As he passed with silent steps, a few names immediately caught his attention. The first person to catch his attention, Julian Becker. The 25-year-old, with his black curly hair and impeccably cut tactical clothes, looked like he stepped out of a magazine cover. The $60,000 custom-made rifle in his hand glittered. Julian was Hawthorne's golden child. Sponsorship deals, competition records, social media followers. It was all part of a legend woven around him. And now, That legend approached Lena Wagner with a dismissive smile. "If you pass me, I'll leave right away," he said, his voice echoing through the live broadcast. "But if I win, you go cleaner." Laughter erupted in the hall. Julian's group, Sophie Berger, Finn Schneider, and Luca Weber, took turns clapping. The mocking gaze pierced Lena. Sophie tossed her golden hair that fell over her luxurious tactical outfits and said, "This is a training ground, dear, not a low-budget war movie." At that moment, the head coach of the range, Colonel Richard Stein, approached. With his gray hair, his uniform adorned with medals on his chest, and his fierce gaze, he was like a wall of charisma. "Are you sure you know which end of the rifle in your hand to hold?" he asked, a clear look of disdain in his voice. Lena looked into Colonel Stein's eyes. Her hazel eyes sparkled with determination. "I'll learn," he said simply. His voice was neither sarcastic nor assertive, but the confidence in him hit the chest of everyone there. Because there was no fear in that sentence. There was only promise. The processions continued. As Lena made her way to Lane 8, which had been reserved for her, Finn called out after her, "Be careful that your rusty rifle doesn't fall apart." He threw a coffee mixer on the floor, right in front of Lena's feet. "Take it, it's time to clean up." Someone else, Luca, rolled an empty sleeve at his feet. Next task, polishing the targets. But Lena didn't react to any of them. He neither looked nor was silent. He just walked. His silence was louder than words. Dr. Miriam Hoffman stepped forward from the instructor's table at that moment. The tailored blazer she was wearing fit gracefully, but the tone of voice, it was the opposite of grace. "That's quite unusual," he said loudly. "This is not a help center. The rifle in his hand may have belonged to the museum. Maybe you're better suited to a public shooting range." The crowd applauded. Some laughed in support. Lena's background, her dress, even the way she breathed was a cause of humiliation here. The live broadcast was still going on. Lena's mother was watching the broadcast from a hospital room. Each mockery flashed like a fracture in the mother's pupils on the screen. Then Julian Becker raised his rifle. His name shone on the digital leaderboard. First shot, 10 second, 9.9 third, 10 back-to-back near-perfect hits. Everyone in the hall stood up. A deluge of applause broke out. Julian turned to Lena. There was the comfort of victory in his eyes and the arrogance of victory on his lips. Let it be easy, no more. But Lena didn't even look up. He moved to lane 8. Quietly, he cocked his rifle. He took a deep breath. The laughter around him gave way to whispers. Everyone was waiting for it to fall, to be thrown out of that elite wall with one mistake, one free throw. But at that moment, only one sound was heard. Ping. In lane 8, time seemed to freeze. Lena Wagner breathed out quietly. The M1 Garand rifle he rested on his shoulder was in his hands like a legacy that could not be worn out over the years. His eyes were locked on the target 50 meters away. The whole hall held its breath. The processions had stopped, and the laughter had ceased. By now, everyone was waiting for that first bullet. And then ping. The number that appears on the digital dashboard, 10. A hum spread through the hall. "Luck," Lucas said. "Coincidence," Sophie said. But no one's voice was louder than Lena's. Second shot. The same calmness. It's the same breath. Ping. 10. Whispers spread. Sophie's brows furrowed. The grin on Finn's face disappeared. On the live broadcast screen, the comments began to change rapidly. "Who is this girl? Is it really 10? It must be a joke. And if the third one is 10, I'm here, right?" Third shot. Ping. 10. And the system played the celebratory tune after 3 perfect hits in a row. It was a sound of honor, rarely heard at the range. Lena's facial expression did not change. His eyes were fixed on the target 50 meters away. It was as if he was in another world. Perhaps his father's voice was in his ears. "Combine your breath with the gun. The rest is silence." Fourth shot. Ping. 10. Now, most of the onlookers were standing, breathless. The wooden folder in Colonel Stein's hand trembled slightly. Julian's eyes were fixed on Lena. There was no longer arrogance but curiosity in that look. A perception of threat. Fifth shot. 10. An athlete's headset fell to the ground from the back rows. Sixth. 10th. The silence was so intense that if a needle fell, it would echo. Sophie lowered her binoculars and held her hands trembling. Luca was slid back in his chair, his head supported by both hands. Seventh shot. 10th. The tone of the music had now become more of an anthem than a melody. Every bullet from Lena dealt another blow to the bastion of eliteness. 8th. 10. There was no stud in the hall. The lips that had once smiled were now tightened. Eyes filled with tears and hands were sweaty. 9th. 10. Vanessa's hands trembled. She put down her binoculars. Impossible, he whispered. In the end. 10th shot. Lena exhaled once more. As his father taught, he pressed the trigger like a word. Ping. 10. Glowing word on the board. New facility record. 100 out of 100 music played. This time it was not a celebration, but a victory anthem. The digital screen wrote Lena's name. Lena Wagner. Hawthorne Elite Range new record holder. There was a moment's silence in the hall. Then came the first applause. From Colonel Richard Stein. The tough man stood up with respect shining in his eyes, accompanied by slow but powerful applause. I haven't seen a shot like this in 40 years, he said. Applause followed. First a few people, then the whole hall. Those cynical young people, those arrogant eyes. Now he was bowed in shame. Comments on the live stream were now united on one thing. Great. The Queen has arrived. Legendary moment. He's a legend. Julian Becker was silent. Her pride was defenseless to a single bullet from Lena. All achievements, awards, they were all fading in an instant. A simple smile from Lena flashed like a spark in Julian's heart. I was stupid, Julian said. You're not just better, you are untouchable. Lena turned her head. He replied with only his gaze. That look was the silent response to a world that had turned its back on it for years. The silence of the facility was like a kind of ritual. The victory that came with 10 bullets was not just a number. It was a challenge, a revolution. Everyone was either bowing their heads in shame in front of the young woman they had previously despised, or still trying to understand what had happened. Lena Wagner was no longer just a guest. It was now the Hawthorne Elite Polygon itself. While the words 100 out of 100, new record, flashed on the boards in the hall, another screen was activated. The director of the plant, General Alexander Voigt, stepped heavily on the scene. Her silver hair shimmered under the LED lights, her full voice spreading throughout the hall. We didn't just watch a shooting competition here today, he said. We have seen here today how arrogance, prejudice, and false superiority have collapsed. At that moment, everyone's eyes shifted to the ground. Lena Wagner, Voigt continued. He didn't just set a new record. He reminded us that skill is not innate, it cannot be bought, but it can only be acquired through effort and determination. And then, with a sign, a large digital plaque appeared on the wall. Lena Wagner, record holder, 100 out of 100. Hawthorne Elite Polygon. A hum spread through the hall. Lena's name was there now. It could not be erased. It was non-negotiable. Every wall that excluded him was now adorned with his name. General Voigt turned to him with a solemn expression. Necessary proceedings will be initiated against anyone in this hall who insults him, who questions his ability. Our standards will be redefined based on mastery and not status. At that moment, the faces of many people turned pale. Marcus Klein bowed his head behind the reception desk. Dr. Miriam Hoffman avoided making eye contact while wiping sweat from her forehead. Thousands of viewers were witnessing this scene on the live broadcast. Hashtags exploded. Hashtag Lena Wagner, hashtag Yenny Stand at hashtag Elit Ligianid and Tanumla. Julian Becker, on the other hand, was motionless in the midst of all these moments. The pride on his face was gone, replaced by admiration and regret. All those arrogant jokes are on one side of the scale. The other has 10 bullets that Lena shot in silence. Julian approached softly. His voice was almost like a whisper. I was wrong, he said. You're not ordinary. You are the heart of this place. Lena's faint smile was the kind that an entire system couldn't answer. He was not demanding an apology, but an understanding. Without averting his eyes, Julian continued. If you'll let me, I'd like to start with a coffee. I owe you a well-deserved conversation. Lena lowered her head, her eyes meeting him. A short sentence that sounds like a quiet, warm response. Just listen this time. At that moment, everyone was silent. That hall full of laughter was now the silence of a cathedral. Everyone watched how pride collapsed and true respect rose. The live stream comments were wild. The most beautiful destruction I've ever seen. The birth of a queen. Arrogant elite system. We watched the collapse live. That day at the Hawthorne Polygon was not just a competition for many. It was a demarcation line. It was a turning point that allowed anyone who was thinking about who belonged in, who should be left out, to see which side of that line they were on. But for Lena Wagner, it was the fulfillment of a promise, a silent vow to his father to deserve his legacy. He had come not to prove his place to anyone, but to remind them. After the victory, Lena was still the same. The old jacket he wore, the rifle he used, his braided hair, they were all still there. But the eyes had changed now. The same jacket, no longer mockery, it was respectful. The same rifle is no longer a rusty antique. It had become a history-making weapon. And Lena, he was a name that no one could ignore anymore. A month later, a digital billboard at the entrance to the shooting range still had the inscription, Lena Wagner, record holder, 100 out of 100. Many people who used to despise Lena now cited her name as an example. The young shooters said they wanted to be like him, and the coaches talked about his discipline. And Julian Becker, he was the closest witness to all this silent transformation. What happened at the shooting range that day had stirred something inside Julian. For the first time in his life, he had both admired someone and felt ashamed of himself. Lena had torn down that arrogant wall of laughter without saying a word. This time, Julian remained silent of his own accord, and he began to listen. The coffee he offered that day came to fruition a few days later. They sat in a cafe away from the crowd. Lena didn't say much, but Julian continued to speak. For the first time, he realized that he was so honest when he tried to explain himself. There was a freedom in Lena's silence, and he sought a place for himself in freedom. Time passed. The eye-to-eye meetings lasted longer. The silences became more meaningful. Their relationship was not like complimenting each other, but walking side by side. Lena was still the same person, unpretentious, clear, and deep-rooted. But now there was someone else with him. Julian began to dress not in his luxurious tactical clothes, but in the honesty of Lena's look. He chose to walk with her. 3 months later, Julian one day pulled a small, plain box out of his pocket. A silver ring. Unpretentious, but excellent. Just like Lena. He made an offer. His words were not flashy, but his gaze was full. I want to walk with you, like you. Lena smiled, and he replied with only a gesture of the head. This time, silence meant yes once again. The wedding took place in a low-key ceremony attended by only a few close people. There were no social media posts or sponsorship posters. But there was a new update on the Polygon's board. Lena Wagner, record holder, 100 out of 100, first and only. It was no longer just a playground for the elite. It had become an icon. The Hawthorne Polygon had been transformed thanks to Lena. That he reminded us once again. Talent has no brand value. Respect doesn't come with labels. Real power, it comes out of those who are trying to silence it. And one morning, Lena strapped her rifle over her shoulder. Next to him was Julian. Are you ready? The young man asked. Lena smiled. I'm always ready. They walked together, from shadows to light. And it was no longer just the sound of bullets that echoed in the silent walls of Hawthorne, but the steps of a legend. If Lena's silent resistance touched you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like this story. Because sometimes the loudest sound is a single bullet fired without using any words.